and welcome to this week's YouTube video. Today I want to talk about contrast in your artwork and why it is important in your paintings. I will be showing you how I painted this Siamese cat and how I used contrast in this painting to help me make it a bit more effective. So let's get straight into the painting. I have painted this with an extended Zorn palette. The Zorn palette I have used is yellow ochre light, cadmium red, titanium zinc white and ivory black. I have also added alizarin crimson and cadmium yellow to this palette. So I have two yellows, warmer, cooler, opaque and transparent, two reds, warmer, cooler, opaque, transparent, and one blue, semi-transparent. Ivory black has a blue leaning and so can be used as a blue. I must confess I have also used ultramarine in the cat's eye, but that is the only place where I have used my true blue. Everywhere else it is my black. I have painted this cat in 4 sittings and I messed up sitting 2. I ended up muddying up my colours and I had to wipe a lot of the paint from the canvas. The reason I muddied up the colours was due to my poor colour choice and I overused my black and didn't take into account its semi-transparent nature. Black can be a tricky colour to use, so if you would like a bit more information on how to use black in your paintings, have a look at this video available on my channel. I will do a close-up a little later on in the video of my muddied colours just so you can see what I mean. My only solution was to wait for the painting to dry and then attempt sittings 3 and 4 over the top. So I just wanted to give you a little context of my issues with the painting before I start talking about contrast. What is contrast? Contrast is achieved when opposite elements are placed together. So, for example, high contrast in value, so light and dark. Colour, for example, blue and orange are colour opposites and when placed together look great. Brushwork, loose brushwork next to tight brushwork. Temperature, cool next to warm. Edges, soft edges next to hard edges, etc. Opposites always work well when placed together, so I would highly recommend thinking about how to use them in your artwork. How have I used opposites in this painting? I have my darkest value in my centre of interest. Nowhere else do I go this dark in my painting. This helps direct my viewer's eye to my cat's face. I also have my only blue area in my centre of interest in the cat's eye. Notice how that cat's eye is surrounded by orange in these areas. Blue and orange are opposite colours, so I am creating additional contrast with my colour choice. Furthermore, I am using my black as more muted blue in this painting. So my colours go blue, black blue and orange. I also have a temperature shift from cool to warm. Notice also that my hardest edge is next to very loose soft brushwork. I have used no broken colour in the cat's face. It is a block of black paint, but I have a lot of broken colour surrounding this area. When you are painting, you need to think about all these elements. I would always suggest having either your darkest value or lightest value in your area of interest. It could be something really simple like the reflection in an eye. If you do not use white anywhere else in your painting, it will stand out. Because I have not used my pure black, this dark anywhere else in my painting, it really helps the cat's face to pop against its background. Think about your temperatures. Don't put too many warm temperatures together or too many cool temperatures together. If you alternate them, as I have in this painting, it will really help to add contrast, interest and form to your painting. If you are unsure of where to vary your temperatures, just remember the rule, warm light equals cool shadows and cool light equals warm shadows. In this painting, I have warm light, so I have used my black in the shadows and then my 2 yellows and cadmium red in my warm areas. I have also used my alizarin crimson in my cooler areas together with my black, and it provides enough of a contrast against my warm colours to give me that colour shift I am after. Remember, your alizarin crimson is a cooler red, so if I keep it out of my warm areas and only use it in my cool areas, mixed with the black, it will be cool enough when placed alongside anything mixed with cadmium red. So you really need to think of the colours on your palette in terms of warm and cool temperatures and make them work for you in this way. Think also about your colour combinations. Colour opposites look amazing when they are placed next to each other. So for example, blue and orange, as I have done in this painting, red and green, yellow and purple. Don't forget also that you can neutralise colour opposites by mixing them together. So for example, orange and blue make brown, red and green make brown, and yellow and purple make grey. You can use all these subtle neutrals in your painting and they will provide further contrast when placed alongside your more saturated colours. It is very important not to be too heavy-handed with your saturated colours. In this painting, I have used my black to take a lot of the punch out of my red and yellow, and you can really see it in the grassy areas in the foreground. That yellow is more noticeable because it is a saturated colour placed next to a neutral. Think about placing a good mix of hard and soft edges in your painting. Remember that your eye will be naturally drawn to areas with hard edges. A successful painting should have a mix of hard and soft edges. You can also lose edges too, like I have done in this grassy area. Even though the camera picked up the details of this grassy area much more than I have suggested, to paint in such detail would not have worked. This area would have competed with this area, so I needed to edit this as much as possible and lose the majority of my edges here. Contrasting brushwork is also important in a painting. Think about all the different brushes you can use and the different marks they make depending on how you handle them and load them up with paint. Never use the same size brush to paint a whole painting. You need variety between big brushes and small brushes, soft brushes that will not lift paint off so easily, and harder brushes. If you are not sure what brushes to use, as a rule, I tend to use smaller brushes in my area of interest because they allow me to paint more detail. As I move out of this area, my brushes tend to get bigger and I will use softer brushes that will let me paint wet paint on top of wet paint. Lastly, don't forget about the contrast you can achieve with the paint texture itself. You can have passages of very thin paint next to areas of very thick paint. You can also allow parts of your canvas to show through, especially if you have underpainted it first. I always tend to put a wash of raw sienna on my canvas before I start, and often I allow this to show through in parts of the painting. You can use different mediums to adjust your paint thickness. For example, in the beginning of my paintings, I use mineral spirits to thin down my paint. I will cover the canvas with a very rough sketch, just as I did in sitting 1. This acts a little bit like an underpainting, as it helps me with correct drawing, plus an average colour and temperature. I will then use thicker paint in my next 3 sittings, but often I will leave parts of sitting 2 to show through in my thicker areas. When I talk about thicker paint, you can use mediums to help the paint flow better if you are naturally a thin painter. I use linseed oil to make my paint a bit more pliable. If you are unsure of where to have your thicker paint and thin paint, a simple rule to follow is to either have your lighter areas thicker and your darker areas thinner, or to have your darker areas thicker and your lighter areas thinner. It doesn't matter which way around you choose, but don't do both. Most artists opt for thicker, lighter areas. simply because white paint is naturally more opaque, and so often it makes sense from a practical point of view, but there is no reason why you cannot do it the other way round if you want to. The more contrast you can get into your paintings, the more successful they will be. Practice is key. If you always try to think about all these elements whilst you are painting and try to add them where you can, it will become a much more natural thing to do in your process, and you will find you start doing it intuitively without having to overthink it. I hope you have enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you will find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching, and see you for the next one.